Appreciate everybody coming out for this. Not to mention, just, in effect, the film, while my face might be on it, it's the culmination of a great deal of work coming from many different sources. And it wouldn't be what it is without the community that has been so supportive of this. The first Zeitgeist was not actually a film. Some might know this that know the history. It was just a personal project. And the only reason I'm here is because all of you. The only reason I've continued to do this, because I don't particularly enjoy filmmaking, to be perfectly honest, but I appreciate what it amounts to being in the communication and the role it serves in society as an art form and the change that it can have as an effect, and that's the most important point. So I don't sit here as a filmmaker with the product that I've made. I stand here really as an activist and somebody that's trying to, what's that? As an artivist, yes, good plug. No. I'm just kidding. But this is a medium that's a powerful medium that has a tremendous effect on culture. Media, I think, has more of an effect on the way people think. Obviously, it does, in fact, than any type of basic philosophy or the interests of an individual or even a government policy or politics in general. The value systems of society are shaped by the media more than anything else, and I'm hoping that this type of contribution and what will come out of it will be positive. Obviously, I'm not, by the way, as a brief disclaimer for all the people that are going to publish this in the reviews, I'm not calling for everyone to pull all their money out of banks and dump them on the streets of the central banks, as beautiful as that might be. But hence the nature of the quote at the very beginning. But I know some reviewers are going to go crazy with this, with the sort of counterculture, what it might imply. As you might have heard in the media, there's some strange implications with my films already. But nevertheless, I really appreciate you guys being here, and I'll answer questions from Dayaki.
Well, actually, I have a lot of questions, but before I even begin, I just want to say that being here today with all of you, I hope you understand that this is the dawn of a new day. And this passion, this purpose, this idea for a resource-based society and global abundance is not something that our children will inherit. It's something that we get to create and we get to inherit in this lifetime. That's how possible this is. That's how possible this is. And we were talking a few months ago, and we actually talked about that. How quick would it take to create this world? And I told you, in the blink of an eye.
And in a sense, absolutely. It's an awareness issue. As Jacques pleaded with the world in the 1970s and through his whole life, we have the technical capacities to do tremendous things. It's the ideological structures that hold us back, and people holding on to this system because of their self-identification. Of course, I don't need to comment on the nature of power and the addiction of power, which was so important and so eloquently pointed out by Dr. Gabor Mate. And I really think it's a very important thing to consider, that the sickness that we see in culture that we think is human nature and such is these processes of dopamine-related addictions. People get these addictions to power, and they want more and more, and it's beyond all rationale. And that's really what rules the world today, is that form of addiction. And it's rewarded, and it's a sickness. But that is really what stops everything that moves in sort of a progressive sense, is these associations that lock, the mind lock is set, the culture, the status quo is created, and anything that goes against it is hit with a tremendous backlash, because it's not only interfering with the power establishment in their interworkings, but it's also interfering with the social identification, the identities of the individuals that really want to believe that the world we live in is in support of them. And unfortunately, this paradigm is an anti-human paradigm that we live in. So hopefully, and it's a process of evolution too. We could change the face of the earth in 10 years, as Jacques said, if there was an interest to do so. You could do it immediately if you really wanted to do it. So people that say, oh, this will never happen, the reason they say that is because they understand the value problems. They say, well, there's too many, it's too complex, there's too many people, how do you orient the technicals of the property issue and getting the resources from the corporations? Obviously, it would take an initiative to get corporations to understand that it's in their self-interest as human beings to begin this type of process, begin this type of organization, and responsible management of society and taking account for human well-being, and not just eating and drinking, but of the nature of what we need as human beings, of what gives us, what enables us to be prosperous, not be neurotic, not develop addictions, and all those things that people might wonder. Some have already asked me, like, why would the first section didn't make sense to me? And I'm like, well, you're missing something very, very important, is that the first section sets up the reality that there are core human needs. And if there's anything we ever need to relate to, it's human needs that will affect our psychology, that will affect, of course, our physiology, our propensities across the entire spectrum of human behavior and disease. And that's exactly what this is about. It's about making a society that actually caters to human needs, not where you have to distort yourself in order to participate, which is exactly what we do now. But in the end, and just as a final point, the nature of the breakdown, this system's not going to be around for that much longer, one way or another. The question is, what we're really fighting for in the basic sense is, what will the new paradigm be? That is what's going to happen. I mean, we have the sickness, the denial and sickness of those that are really in control of things have to be overcome in some fashion. I certainly never advocate violence or anything of the like, but we can only hope the rationale of the breakdown, as at the very end, if you remember from Zeitgeist Addendum, those that follow the series, the consciousness I is the oldest symbol of consciousness that there ever is, and it occurs with the fictional central banker, and that's the hope, is that the people that really are in control will finally wake up and understand that it's in their self-interest and for their family and for their kids and their grandkids to stop this bullshit known as modern society today. It really blows your mind when you put it into perspective of what we're doing today. So I'll leave it at that. I mean, does anyone here walk around feeling completely abnormal? I mean, I walk around like I just feel absolutely insane when I interact, and I'm walking down the street and I'm looking at what the hell's going on. I'm like, God damn, I should be in an institution. I think a lot of people, most people in institutions are actually normal in a real sense. They just can't deal with the fucking insanity that we deal with today. Yeah. Anything else?
Well, I'm going to save my questions because I think it's unfair. You know, they want to ask you questions.
Okay.
I can always call you up and we can have vegan lunch and
Absolutely.
I can ask you all my questions and we can have a vegan outing, and so it's all good.
Can we kill the ugly screen? It's never intended to be seen. By the way, I apologize for the weird kind of...
It's fine.
There's some weird blurry stuff that happened during the film that was not supposed to be there. I'm really going to have to go back and figure out what that was. I'm sure most of you didn't notice it that bad, but there's some weird color issues that happened. But sorry, I'm being critical, but let's take questions.
No, it's perfect. So the way we're going to do it is we have microphones set up on either side. So please make your way to the microphone. We're trying to keep it no more than 5 people deep at those microphones. And, you know, Peter will be more than joyful to answer your questions, but please keep your questions short and to the point, and make sure you have one before you get up there. In my experience with these Q&As is that there's a tendency for people to want to pontificate a little bit when they ask the question. They actually will preface their question with a long treatment. Please don't do that. Yeah. Because everyone else wants to ask a question, and we don't have much time here tonight. Exactly.
So just ask a straightforward question. I really appreciate that.
Yes, and the last time we did a Q&A with Peter, you know, it was like a 3-hour Q&A. No one wanted to leave. So, you know, we want to give time for everyone to be able to ask questions. Before we start with the first question, what I really loved about the film is what we're all about and advocating for with Artivist and collectively with what we do, which is not just focusing on the problem, but really presenting the possibility.
Yeah.
And I always say the possibility is so much more amazing than the problem ever was.
I would add one thing to that. It's a little bit of a tangent on what you just said, but it's important, is that people complain all the time. People love to complain. And you'll find that the complaints and say, you know, like WikiLeaks put out all this information. You know what? Number of months, guess what? All the stuff WikiLeaks put out, not going to do a goddamn thing. Yeah. The complaints and exposure, believe me, I went down that road too, like my first film. You think if you expose everything, somehow it's going to change something. It doesn't. The real danger to the establishment is not exposing their shenanigans, to put it nicely, is showing a solution and getting people on board with something different. That's the danger of the establishment.
Okay, so let's start over here with the gentleman over here. Yes, please.
I was just wondering, could you hear?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I was just wondering, in regards to the film, I was under the impression that you was going to start a resource-based economy experimental city with the proceeds from the film.
Well, no, that was never discussed. Maybe in passing, someone might have commented on that. The proceeds of the film, I couldn't expect, I have no idea what's happening. I'm not making a dime off any of the releases that are happening globally. What's happening is all the money is going towards the chapters. In effect, I feel that the public awareness of this issue is more important than a technical example right now. Getting people to understand the sheer logic that I went through in part 3, Project Earth. So while I think it's a great idea eventually to put it to test, which we need to do, but that would take an extravagant amount of money and a monetary system to do so. Not to mention trying to find a country that would even allow it. There are ideas put forward by the Venus Project to create like a test city that's also an educational facility, like an amusement park type thing. Lots of this stuff has been talked about for years. But for me, I think the most important point is simply getting the understanding and permeate that understanding as far and wide. So to answer your question, no, nothing like that for this film. All the proceeds are going towards the chapters so they can continue to increase awareness in their regions.
Thank you for your question. Now we're going to come over here to the other side.
Yes, I'm curious in the vein of solutions and offering solutions. Next to the monetary system and replacing it with something different, the energy system seems to be the thing that is holding us back the most. And I'm curious if you did research and if the Venus Project has done research into the free energy technologies, the hydrogen-based technologies, the things that really offer a completely new paradigm with regard to energy production and availability, so that the world is dealing with energy that's essentially free, that allows that egalitarianism to have a non-monetary substance to it. And I'm curious how much work you did with that. And sort of like Rupert doesn't talk about it. He talks about it like there's a lack that can't be undone in the energy world
in this
right
system,
now.
there certainly is. I think when he describes it, he's really relating to this system, because monetarily, as I denoted at the end of this film, monetarily, there is no way you are going to see the energy infrastructure change as fast as it needs to allow for basically the sustainability that we see today to continue. As far as energy itself, Jacques Fresco has done outrageous amounts of research on energy, and the levels of energy that we hear about, all the sorts of renewables, solar and all the basic stuff, but there are all sorts of other very subtle, complex forms of energy, like pressure transducers. Buildings move. They move all the time, you just don't know it. And you can build these pressure transducers within the walls, and the subtle nuance of the building moving, with enough of these can create energy. I mean, any heat differential, any type of motion, any type of radiation is energy. Everything's energy. It's simply a matter of figuring out how to harness it. But back to the point of the problem with this system, there are solutions, and they have to, oil is like a superpower energy that we've been using, and it's really concentrated, and it's been very effective in its versatility as easy to move around and everything else. The new paradigm will not be as simple. You'll have supercapacitors that will replace the engine of cars, meaning the battery, not oil, obviously. That technology, battery technology, we don't have to discuss. It's been around for a long time. We can go many, many miles on charges of battery. That's common knowledge, even though the public really doesn't face it. But the advanced forms of energy, the heat differentials, using the ocean, using differences in temperature simply between the topsoil and lower attributes of almost anywhere on the planet, it's simply a matter of getting that process in place, which is a completely radical shift from what we have now, which again is not going to happen in the monetary system. There is no way you're going to see financing for something as colossal as this, and that's the real problem. There's no problem with energy if we didn't have the monetary barrier.
That's the point that I would like to see brought out more, is that the solutions exist.
Yes.
The solutions are all there. The research and development is essentially done. All that is lacking is the knowledge, the willpower to implement them.
All that's lacking is well, I'd say it's less lacking as it is the fact that the barrier of the establishment. What's not lacking, it's the problem of this profit system that we have that will not put anything in place unless people can make money off of it. And there's no way anyone's going to make money off of the total energy revision, not to mention once it's set up, if it's done correctly and efficiently and with the maximum sustainability protocol that I denote in the film under the third section, which is technically defined, by the way, it's not an opinion that I'm throwing out there, it can be implemented and it can be put together and it will work extremely efficiently. So, excuse me, by the way, I haven't had much sleep, so if I deviate a little bit, try to snap out of it. So I hope that answers your question.
You did. You
Good.
did. Next person, please.
Do you think that big government could play a role in the transition, and how?
Well, the word big government, of course, is loaded, so we'll just assume that government in general. Do I think government can play a role? Obviously, you're going to have some form of governance to get anything like this done. You have to have a scientific community that's looking at the potentials, the possibilities, tracking the resources, and putting together the system that can enable this type of management process on a global scale. So yes, I mean, but I wouldn't refer to it as government as we know it today. I mean, we're not talking about Republicans and Democrats doing this, no.
What would you call it?
What's that?
What would you call it?
I wouldn't call it anything except people that are educated in the fields relevant. So you have someone that actually has been educated on what it means to set up a systems, a computational system, a programmer that can actually track all the resources. People that have been renewing and testing renewable energies in their labs and seeing what's possible. It's a scientific world, whether we want to believe it or not. As Jacques said, cold science, there's the stigma to science. Science is the warmest thing. It's the most loving thing ever conceived, ever presented to us. Science is, I read a review and the guy was so cynical of the film, it was one of the first reviews, and he's like, science worship. Peter Joseph's not as bad as L. Ron Hubbard, but he's got this science worship thing. And it was so belligerent, and because he didn't even listen to anything. He's like, he just hears science. Oh, they're talking about science. It gotta be Scientology. So those stigmas there has to be, anyway, I could go on many different tangents on how you could divide up the sectors of analysis and sectors of approach. Jacques could talk about this at length. This is exactly what he has thought about for so long. It's in his book. They're interdisciplinary teams is the term he uses.
Is it the book, The Best Money Can't Buy? Is that what we're talking about? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks.
Next question, please.
All right, Peter. Thank you, first of all, for the amazing series of films.
Thanks.
And wanted to address something that came up in addendum. You gave some practical do's and don't do's. One of them was don't join the military. The end of this movie, you show the guy taking off his helmet and putting it down. We need open-minded, educated individuals in law enforcement and in the military that will disobey unlawful orders to prevent bloodshed.
Yes. Well, that's a temporal issue, though. In the long run, the military establishment serves the role of essentially a corporate assassin squad. And I'm sorry to be so harsh about it, but that is the reality of it. The most people that are in the military are very good people, but unfortunately, just like everybody, victims of culture emerge in this culture, and I feel nothing but horrible for the 1 in 4 veterans that commit suicide. Human beings are not meant to kill each other, okay? They're not meant to kill each other. Dr. James Gilligan, the expert on violence, he says the first thing they do when they bring in someone for murder is put them on suicide watch. First thing they do. Because the trauma of engaging in that type of violence for the average human being is so severe that the first thing people want to do is kill themselves. And you see the phenomenon throughout the world. And the military is a classic case in point. 1 in 4 more people, I think, have died of suicide from the war in Iraq, if I remember correctly, than they died in the actual battle in America. That tells you something very, very important about the so-called human nature and what it means. There is a human nature. It has to do with a set of needs, necessities, and interactions. Can someone be conditioned to be a mass murderer? Of course, and not have any remorse? Yes. But generally speaking, human beings are not meant to kill each other. And I think that becomes very, very clear when you analyze the actual data of what happens through time. And back to the military, I have no disrespect for anyone in the military. I do stand by that, holistically speaking, while protection is a firm reality in this culture, while it's just the nature of the system creates the need to have protection. In the long run, it's not a solution. It's not a solution. So the anti-violence issue is so important for everyone to realize, and the middle ground of defending it by intermediary issues is unacceptable. Just to say that we need it now is not a solution. It's not a point that holds any validity when you actually put things in the broadest view. So to conclude my long-winded statement, the answer is that no one should join the military. And I interact with people in the military all the time, and I tell them, just leave. If everyone leaves, no one goes to war. Imagine if there's no, people, let me say one more thing. People say, oh, Hitler. We need the military to defend against people like Hitler. Hitler brainwashed hundreds of thousands of soldiers to follow him. If these soldiers could think for themselves, if they had been taught how to think critically, none of them would even pay attention to what Hitler had to say. That's the way you have to think about it. And one more final thing. Poverty in this country is the ultimate driver for personnel for the military. The people in power want poverty because they know they can get their arsenal of cannon fodder from the poor, while they pretend that it's for college education. Anyway, sorry.